Who am I? Who am I? Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters, I spent the first 40 years or so of my life trying to answer that question. Without exaggerating the drama of my childhood and yet without sugarcoating the effect that it had upon me, without question, I grew up with a demon that I created. Let me give you just a brief background to lay the foundation. The first 7 years of my life, I lived in a small, and I mean very small town in rural South Carolina. The world I lived in was all black. All of my family, the school I attended, the church we attended, and everybody I knew were black. Now, my family attended church every week and had a strong faith in God and Christ. While they occasionally would talk about the Bakra, who I later learned were white people, they never expressed any animosity, bitterness, anger, or any negative emotions about whites. So in my world, being black was as natural as being a boy. Now, even though my parents and all of my family were deeply religious, they also had a belief that was very common in the American culture at that time. That belief, children were to be seen and not heard. Now, what I'm next going to tell you may seem a bit of a contradiction, but I want you to get into their world and understand where the people were coming from. Adults saw their job to raise their children with strong moral values, including love for God and family, to respect authority, and to do as they were told. To accomplish this, there was a strong belief that if you spared the rod, so corporal punishment was not seen as being cruel or abusive. And of course, that's much different from how we look at corporal punishment today. Now, in my family, they not only held that the belt and a nice strong branch off a bush in the yard were important instruments to install character in the child, they would also make us spend time in the closet with the door shut for extended periods of time. Today, this would be considered child abuse, and there's no question that it had its deleterious effects on us. At least it did on me. However, it's important to realize that none of us, neither myself nor any of my siblings, ever thought of my parents or my relatives as being cruel or unkind. On the contrary, we saw their actions as an expression of love. Unfortunately, we made the assumption, or at least I made the assumption, that there was something wrong with me, and that's why I kept getting punished. Now, what this did to me was create a strong, all consuming desire to avoid getting punished. So when I started school, I saw it as a reprieve from the world at home. Here, I learned very early that even though the teachers were given permission to apply corporal punishment, it was only done when the student mouthed off or really messed up. At the same time, I saw that the children who got good grades were rarely, if ever, punished. I quickly made getting good grades the major focus of my education. B's were acceptable, but A's were the mark of real success. Regrettably, I wasn't much concerned about what I was learning. I put little emphasis on the subjects that I studied, but I did find that this strategy was an effective survival skill. I began to receive fewer lashes at home as a result and became one of the star students throughout my school years, including high school. What this strategy didn't do was teach me to like myself. And I continued to believe that there was something inherently wrong or bad about me as a person. What the strategy did accomplish was to get me a full scholarship at a top-rated black college, the same black college that Martin Luther King graduated from. But the demon of self-hatred continued to plague me, and I soon connected with people who were more concerned about having fun and filling their head and body with drugs and alcohol. Now, I realized years later that that was a form of self-medication. After only one semester, I was asked to leave the school and allow the room for somebody who really wanted to learn. And then I found myself adrift with no purpose in my life. Wanting to avoid the draft, I enlisted in the Air Force. Now, after taking all the Air Force tests, the Air Force made me an NCO, commissioned me in Germany, and put several people under my leadership. Without belaboring you with a lot of stories, I managed to serve for 8 years before all the negative feelings about myself so consumed me that the Air Force, without animosity, gave me an honorable discharge and asked me to leave. Back home in the States, I strove to understand what was going on in my life. For a time, I thought my problem was that I was black, that somehow being black made me bad. I soon gave up on that idea as I realized I liked being black, and in many ways, I felt that being black was an advantage, at least for me. Perhaps it was that drive to understand who I was that led me on a whim to go back to college and get a nursing degree with a special certification to work in the emergency room. Working at a hospital in Texas, I came to appreciate both the people and the work that I did. But at the same time, I noticed that all the thoughts and feelings that had plagued me my whole life were only getting worse. One afternoon, I reached a very low point in my life, and at that moment, I sought and found relief by going back to what I had learned as a child in church. I turned and gave my life to Jesus Christ. Now, I tell you this because that's what happened. In the moment I gave all my feelings of guilt, shame, and self hatred to Christ, the struggle I had endured for nearly 3 decades was over. Now I realize that each of us have to deal with our lives from our own paradigms, and for me, that paradigm was the Christian faith. Now, knowing that nursing was not how I was meant to spend my life, I left that career, and this time because I chose to. So, who am I? Well, the answer does not have to be determined by the events in the past. What happened in the past happened, but it doesn't make you or me who we are. But it does make us believe that we are who we are. Now, that belief is determined by you and me. So, what does that mean? I am whoever I chose to be. So, with confidence and without reservation, I can tell you that I'm first a Christian who happens to be black. I'm also an American who happens to be black. But these are only parts of a larger, broader spectrum of who I am. All of us come from a past that include broad ranges of what we can call our cultural heritages. I am, of course, a product of my African heritage. However, I am also an integral part of my European heritage. The language I speak, my religion, my cultural values, including my understanding of politics, economics, and a broad range of cultural values have all come from the European settlers to America. Today, an American born and raised in this country can no longer separate their African heritage from their European heritage because all these values, beliefs, and attitudes have been fused into a single heritage that we call our national heritage. These, along with the cultural values of my African ancestors, have all been fused into our national heritage. And today, when I hear the term Black history, to me, that really is American history. And unlike many Black Americans who have been taught to hate America because it introduced slavery and all of the negative consequences that fill our history books, I am proud to be an American despite all the bad things that the country has done. I truly believe that the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness did not really describe the country when they were penned, but rather described an ideal vision of what the country could and would become. Though raised in the Jim Crow South under the Southern law, I can say without hesitation that nothing I have ever wanted to achieve has been withheld or denied me because of my color. Today, I believe any person can strive to become and achieve whatever they desire because America is as colorblind as any country could be. And while it's not a perfect country, I prefer to judge it based on how far we've come and not how far we are from being perfect. When Cynthia told me about this Toastmasters club that she was starting, I felt it was a perfect fit for who I choose to be and where to put my future efforts. So building on the social justice and equality that we have created in this country and supported by government, business, and religious leaders across America, it is exciting to think that through an organization like Toastmasters and leaders worldwide, we can expand and share what we've accomplished with countries around the world.